Thank you, Dionne Jacksmiller, TVJ. Minister, billions of dollars are going to be coming in terms of relief. Why have we not yet heard the announcement of an independent oversight committee to include, for instance, private sector, civil society, and opposition members to monitor the expenditure that is going to be done along with regular reporting to Parliament? What we don't want is an Auditor General's report 6 months after the fact.
Oopsie.
I have a whole heap of questions. I'll just ask a couple and yield to my colleagues.
Sure. All right, please
May I continue?
Give me 2 more. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, second, I've been hearing everything that's been said. However, the national response, the immediate national response, has been slow and inadequate. The government has been acting as if it didn't know the kind of damage that a Cat 5 would have done. Why have we not seen immediate deployments of mass aid to the affected communities, along with things like immediate erection of warehouses to hold such aid, immediate erection of mass shelters and or evacuations? And then finally, for now, why had we not seen an equivalent in-time response to Westmoreland as there was to St. Elizabeth, seeing that that was where the eye of the hurricane made landfall? So it was obvious that there would also have been catastrophic damage there.
All right, thank you. Those are 3 questions. And Dionne, it's good to have you here. Not used to having you at my press briefings, but I'm glad to have you. And those are questions you hear floating around, and I'm glad that we get a chance to answer them. You asked about a committee with the funds that are coming in. Yes, we're going to get some insurance payments from CRIF and some of the other policies that we have. I think tomorrow you need to listen out for the Prime Minister's announcements. There will be a body that will be overseeing that reconstruction work. That will happen, and the Prime Minister will name the members of that. There has been discussions, even with the Leader of the Opposition, about whether or not that could be the National Partnership Council. Because remember, we have a National Partnership Council that has the opposition there, that has civil society, has academia, has private sector there. So it's a broad group of individuals that are in that partnership council. So one consideration is to use that partnership council that already exists with all of the key players and partners as that mechanism at the top. And it's going to be broader than just looking at how the funds are being paid. That committee is the one that's going to have to say, how do we build back? You know, we have communities that are close to the sea. What does rebuilding look like? Should we rebuild there? Should we rebuild somewhere else? And so there are big questions that we have to confront with as Jamaica. And the commitment the Prime Minister has made is that there will be an overarching body, whether you use an existing mechanism like the Partnership Council, or you use something that's new, a new body, but there will be an oversight body. Now, I left Cabinet early before it finished, not sure where they would have reached on it, but there has been discussions already in Cabinet on that one. The second one is about the immediate response being slow. I know Minister Vaz wants to answer, but so you can come forward, Minister Vaz. But as you come, just noting that a Cat 5 is a different category of a hurricane. And the devastation was significant. And as we've seen with many disasters around the world, and we've been looking at disasters around the world, how quickly you get to mobilize. There is always that period of assessing what is happening and getting the aid in. Yesterday I saw Red Cross, I saw GEM, I saw the World Food Program out, and all of those are coordinated through the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. And so there is a lot more happening, and you hear about the helicopters dropping food. It is, you know, after a hurricane like that, you have to assess and then re-establish new systems to get food out. And I think the team has been doing that. I know Minister Vaz can tell you more about what has happened. And in terms of Westmoreland, everybody is important and everybody is being focused on. The Prime Minister went out for 2 days straight, and he went to all of the affected parishes. He went to St. Elizabeth, he went to Westmoreland, he went to Trelawney, he went to St. James, and he also eventually went to Manchester. and he went to Hanover too. So those first 2 days after the hurricane, the Prime Minister made sure to go to all of the most affected parishes. Minister Vaz.
So I'll answer one aspect of it, and Minister McKenzie will answer the other. There is a committee that has been named with Senator Keith Duncan and Minister Audrey Marks to coordinate with private sector. That has been going on in earnest. We met all weekend. There is warehouse spacing that has been found in Montego Bay. There's warehouse spacing that has been found outside of what the government apparatus has. I would say we are probably up to 300,000 square feet of additional warehousing that is going to be needed, because we're going to be staging from Montego Bay and Kingston, because that's where the two international airports are. I want to remind you who asked the question, and I want to remind Jamaica, tomorrow will be 6 days, because the hurricane hit on a Tuesday. So 6 days is where we are at now. And I can say to you that we have not only engaged the full private sector, and they are fully supported with their assets, with their money, and with their expertise, on top of which all of the international organizations and charities who have done this kind of thing all over the world are also at the table. We met for hours on Saturday, and they have done an assessment as to where we are and what we need to do. We cannot bypass the government systems and structures that are in place, but we can take advice and we can use them, and we are intending to do that. You will see a huge improvement this week, and you will see getting better every day going forward. This government is committed, this government is competent to deal with it, and we know our limitations as a government and of course a structure, and we will get the support internationally and from the private sector jointly to deal with this in a comprehensive way, that at the end of it, when we rebuild, we'll be rebuilding for the future and fixing a lot of what problems there were for the last 60 years.
I just want to respond on the comments around the shelter and the relief supplies. I want to make it clear that prior to the hurricane season, all the municipal corporations meet with the ADPEM and the various agencies. There's a humanitarian committee of the National Disaster Council which meets almost every week. Relief items was placed in all parishes across Jamaica prior to the event. The parishes that are badly affected, all the facilities were destroyed during the hurricane. So it is not that the government did not. We have always placed relief items at strategic points across the country. Montpelier is a massive warehouse in Montego Bay, but access to the facility has been impeded because of the road conditions. And I want to make it abundantly clear that this administration is not incompetent, and we were responsible, we were proactive in preparing the country. Nobody can plan for a Category 1 or a Category 5 hurricane. Nobody can. And I am saying without fear of contradiction that the government was prepared. We provide the necessary notice to the people. We say to the country that this thing is coming, take the necessary precautions. We could not control God's hand.
Just to indicate that the matter of disaster preparedness is something that has to be very strategic. What the Ministry of Labour and Social Security did is one of the examples where we actually, before the hurricane, worked with the JDF to move several of our items out of the warehouse up to Upper Camp to keep them safe. It's one of the reasons why, despite pre-positioning thousands of packages across the country, particularly in St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, and others, we couldn't do all, because you have to contemplate the fact that as a Cat 5, it will actually affect your warehouse and your shelters, as it did for some of the things pre-positioned in Westmoreland, where it was so bad that we lost some of the items. So the reality is we have a very strategic approach, which includes working with our humanitarian assistance partners. We have 6 mobile storage units across the country now from the World Food Program, another 8 on their way, which will make 14. The Food for the Poor also have massive containers that they are strategically positioning in close proximity to the areas that are greatly affected. The Ministry of Labour and Social Security and government are working also to expand our storage and to expand our production of packages. And we have pushed those out in delivery with our partners. We have right now, Minister, a compilation of perhaps more than 40,000 packages when you look on the bulk items that we have that will be available to us over the next 2 to 4 weeks. So I say that to say that it's not just quick response. We do have rapid response, but it's not just quick response. It's strategy towards long-term recovery.
Yeah. My questions weren't answered. I'm going to repeat them. I add 2 new ones. There has been an obvious and concerning difference in the immediacy of response to Westmoreland as compared to St. Elizabeth. I'm asking why, and with the absolute respect, saying that everybody is the same isn't a response to that concern. Secondly, the response that warehouses were pre-positioned before the hurricane doesn't answer my question as to the slowness of the response once the hurricane had passed in getting in aid, in putting in warehouses or whatever it takes, as well as in providing shelter and or evacuation. So those questions have been answered. And then 2 new ones. One, I'm not hearing an acknowledgement of the fact that there is a crisis in terms of fuel in Western Jamaica, and whether there is some kind of special initiative to deal with that situation. Like all of my colleagues, I've been in the field. I was in Sav yesterday, in Westmoreland yesterday, saw Senator. The gas stations are mobbed with individuals with containers as well as with long lines of car. You can't get no gas until you basically reach back to Kingston. I'm not hearing a specific initiative to address that problem. And finally, I am not hearing any indication of what sounds like a bipartisan effort to deal with this issue. The government, just from looking on, seems to have almost entirely shut out the opposition, notwithstanding your comment about an informal conversation over the phone with the spokesman and education minister. We are not hearing or seeing what appears to be a bipartisan effort to deal with this crisis.
All right, thank you for the questions. I'm going to start with that last one on the bipartisan effort. This has to be an all of Jamaica effort, and I think the Prime Minister has acknowledged that. On the Saturday before the hurricane came, the Prime Minister invited the Leader of the Opposition to Jamaica House to be briefed. He was briefed by Ministry of Labour, was briefed by Evan Thompson. They got several individuals from government briefing on the preparations for the hurricane. A lot of questions were asked. Some suggestions were made in the meeting, and the government took those on board. And I think that's an important signal of intent to have the opposition be a part of the activities. I know that the Leader of the Opposition is in contact with the Prime Minister on a daily basis. I know that that is happening. And so this notion that we're not going to be bipartisan is not correct. We're the government. We have to do what we need to do, and we have to govern. But we also need to say this is a Jamaica effort. You have the church here. We have the opposition that we have said is going to be a part of the oversight body. We have had to be working through a lot of the MPs in order to get aid out. They're very important partners in this. Minister Charles is constantly on the phone with them. Darrell Vaz is constantly on the phone with them. So there is a channel that is open to the opposition, and the opposition is feeding into it. And so we are going to, in our rebuilding, we're going to have everybody on board. The private sector, the opposition is going to be important, and on a sectoral basis. we're going to also have to work with the opposition. And I think that is going to be very clear for everyone to see. And it's not just me, it is the entire government. You spoke about the slowness of the response, the perceived slowness. And you know, the reality is that this was a cat fev. And I'll tell you from my experience being at ODPEM and doing the briefings every single day. Every day, the path shifted. We were expecting it to enter maybe closer to Kingston, then it shifted to maybe Clarendon, then it shifted to maybe closer to Mandeville, and then as it kept going west, we had those who were praying, oh my goodness, it looks like it's gonna miss Jamaica. And then, you know, as it got closer on the morning, and remember the rain started from before, we saw where it was going to probably be parity. And we said, everybody who's in that path, you need to move out of that path. It wasn't until in the morning of the storm that we really had a clearer picture of what this hurricane was doing. This hurricane was not a normal hurricane. In terms of its movement, in terms of it just stalking Jamaica for days, it was not normal. And so it entered where we were not necessarily expecting. And if you go back and look at the reports, you will see that the path shifted quite a bit in the last day in terms of where it would enter Jamaica, and where were people even saying, maybe it's not going to hit Jamaica. And so the warehouses that were there in that path, and even if you go to the day before, even if you look at some of the models, they said Jamaica, it would weaken before it made landfall in Jamaica. That was being reported by the scientists. But it did not weaken. It got stronger right before it came to Jamaica. So that Category 5 devastation, 185 miles an hour wind, that is really, really hard for anyone to plan for. And so the government has had to do what it can do in order to provide the support as quickly as possible. Given our terrain, we're not a flat country, we have mountains, we have rivers. And remember, this hurricane didn't just come with wind. It came with record rainfall, so we had flooding. And so the first thing we have to do in terms of getting to the communities is to open the roads. And that's what Minister Morgan's focus was on. And then after that, it was working with all of our aid agencies and partners to get them into Jamaica, to help them to support us, because they have the international expertise and goods to help us. And so we've done it as quickly as we can. Now, the marooned communities are really the big concern. And we are doing a lot now that we have all the helicopters from JDF and we have from our international partners, we are able to do more food drops than we could before. So there's a lot that has happened, and I want you to talk about fuel too. The fuel one, I'm sorry Minister Vaz had to leave because we were talking about fuel just now. Sorry Minister Vaz had to leave because we were talking about fuel just now.
Minister Vaz has been on my case about since we started clearing. The first priority of access is to create access so that we can reach vulnerable persons, meaning emergency services, whether it be ambulances, whether it be first responders, and so on. So our first priority was not to get heavy-duty tankers into Black River or getting it into Savannah Lamar. So the first priority was single-lane access so that vehicles, SUVs, so on, and people walk foot can go through. That was a very difficult task, especially going through Bamboo Avenue. I don't know if you remember, we had the JDF in there, we had the NWA in there, we had people with cutlasses, we had people intertwined. Bamboo is not something that I can just put a backhoe in and push away because it's very difficult. So we got through Bamboo Avenue, then we went to places like Middle Quarters, where all the light poles were underground, all the trees were underground. So we had to cut through that. We had people at Black River Hospital. JDF had to start coming. Now, let me give you an example. All the doctors at Black River Hospital lost their housing because they lived in a community beside the hospital. So the first responders that you had situated in the space who would serve not just Black River, but also Westmoreland, because the other hospital would be in Sav. So you have hospital in Black River, hospital in Savannah, and people in between go to each. So our first priority was to provide access to rescue those people. After we did that first single lane rescue, and the NWA was able to create a path to Savannah Lamar incrementally. So the first major town we went to, which is maybe why people perceive that there is bias, is Black River, because Black River is on its way. So we're coming from Montego Bay, we're coming from Manchester. We reach Black River first. We see the damage there. That's the first thing that comes out into the public, right? So everybody says Black River is destroyed. Nobody has yet been able to go to Westmoreland because all the roads are blocked. And even flying over, you would not see the full damage because there's no communication. I did not know the extent of Westmoreland's damage until we were able to get people in and get JDF to fly over Westmoreland. We still haven't reached the tanker issue yet. It is only over the last 2 days that we've been able to confidently tell the gasoline haulage contractors that it is now safe for you to drive to Savannah Lamar. Because they said they're not driving under any JPS light pole. So we had to work with JPS to remove those light poles. They're not going to drive against anything that could puncture their tanks. So I went yesterday with heavy equipment behind me, not because the NWA is not doing a good job, but because I needed to be confident to convince the ministry that, listen, we can take the tankers now. The other point is, Dionne, some of the gas stations are destroyed. The gas station on the coast in Black River does not exist anymore. The only gas station that exists in Black River is the one, that is not in the town. It's on the outskirts of the town. Right? The other gas station is not in a good condition. The gas station in Westmoreland is also destroyed. So the issue you're having is not just the availability of bringing in gas into the community, but also where are you going to safely store that gas? And that's a medium-term problem because you can't just send a tanker in there and park it on the side of the road and say, come and buy some gas. When we were driving through yesterday, we had full tanks of gas. And it was not until we reached Boot in St. Anne that we found a gas station that was open late. Yes, there were other gas stations that we heard were open in the day, but because of the nature of what has happened, because of the lack of electricity that is typical for the entire section of the island, a lot of gas stations are closed early. So those are things that we're going to have to work with. But what I can confidently say now is that for the gas stations that are able to take fuel, the retailers, the haulage contractors are now willing to traverse that area. They weren't confident to travel through Black River, go to Sav before yesterday because there were still impediments on the road. I hope that explains the issue, why gas was so short or has been short. Thank you.
And I'll note that Minister Vaz has a proposal in terms of making things much easier there. And also that was one of the reasons where we were thinking about whether or not we needed to maybe restrict some movement maybe in the night, late in the night, so that the fuel trucks can actually go through late in the night and actually get to refuel where the gas stations are okay.